Welcome, friends,
to the How To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Doug.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Yeah, there's masturbation. Never fear, that's why we're here.
Where are your audio uncles? And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge we all need for building a great life. Something like that.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
Tally-ho! Hey, Uncle Doug.
Here am I.
You know what? You know who's not here?
Yeah, it smells so nice in here.
It's that damned Uncle Mark.
Uncle Mark's been fired by the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've taken over, and now it's our podcast, and we don't need you, Mark. Shut up.
He'll find out when he listens to this.
Yeah, exactly. He's knocking downstairs right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys?
Yeah, we are one uncle short this week. Uncle Mark had a work emergency that pulled him away, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, we can do it without him. We don't need that guy.
Yeah.
So the first way that we don't need him is that I am going to delve into a Bible story. And goodness gracious, it's one of the big ones.
The big cinematic Bible story.
Oh, yeah. We're going hardcore.
Yeah. And then we have Dr. Darrel Ray on to talk about jacking it.
Yeah, we're literally, last time he was on the show, he's a psychologist, he's a smarty pants and all that sort of stuff. And we teased that we would have him back on to talk about masturbation. And we did it.
We done did it.
It's coming.
So this is an unorthodox show. We got two uncles and two segments this week. So we're kind of out of the box this week.
Yeah. Take that, world.
Yeah, right.
You can't pin us down.
Today's episode, by the way, brought to us by the good people at Hobby Lobby.
Oh, good.
For all your how-to supplies, shop Hobby Lobby. I don't think they listen to the show. I don't think they know what we're about.
Also, do not shop Hobby Lobby. Do not give them your business. Find another place.
Yeah, find another hobby or another lobby.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
And if Darrell inspires you too much, find a lobby to do your new hobby.
Jacket in the aisle at Hobby Lobby. That is the recommendation of the How To Heretic.
Do not do any of the masturbation that you're about to be told to embark on in any place that will get you arrested.
In the yarn aisle. That's what I recommend. All right, let's do this thing.
Move along!
Well, Uncle Dan.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Oh, man. I you know what I need? I need a vacation. I need like 40 days
to get
and
out of
40
here.
nights of just sweet R&R.
Right on.
But let me tell you something.
It's America and we don't take vacations?
Well, there's that. And also, I feel like a bunch of shit needs to happen. I got to get some ducks in a row before.
All right.
Some eggs in a basket.
Yeah, sure.
Before I can take a big vacation.
Yeah.
I'm alluding very slyly, as the listeners no doubt have picked up on, to the Exodus. I wanted to talk about Moses and the Israelites and all of that business.
Oh boy, we're doing this.
But I think it's going to be a two-parter.
Yeah, it's a lot of content, huh?
Yeah, I mean, this is in celebration of Rosh Hashanah, which has nothing to do with Passover, which would be the correct. But it's the time of, I don't know, there's a Jewish holiday that's happening.
There's a Jewish holiday always happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So we're celebrating that by shredding a bunch of ancient Jews.
Right on.
So, as most of our listeners will know, the setup is basically this. Most of the Israelites are currently slaves in Egypt.
Right.
Historians and archaeologists will point out, no, they weren't.
An incredible historical event that never happened.
That never actually occurred. There's no reason to believe. I mean, the Egyptians were amazing record keepers.
It's kind of their thing.
And they didn't. There's just no evidence that they ever enslaved a whole tribe or race of people.
They wrote on everything.
Yeah.
Right?
And they never said, by the way, this Egyptian guy just bought 4,000 Israelites from that Egyptian
Right.
guy or whatever. Like, this just never happened.
The economic slam that would happen to the Egyptian economy.
Right. But we're going to ignore what actually happened in the real world, and we're going to talk about what happened in the Bible.
That's actually the subheading of the Bible. Ignore what happens in the real world.
Yeah, exactly.
Read the Bible.
So let's dip in. So all this kerfuffle really launches from a fever dream of a doofus that a doofus had in the desert. This particular doofus was not raised as a shepherd or a goat herd or whatever, but he had gotten married, and like so many doofuses of this world, his father-in-law had given him a job he wasn't qualified for, in this case, tending flocks. So there's Moses out tending his flocks, and like an idiot, he had taken them to, quote, the far side of the wilderness, or, depending on your translation, the backside of the desert.
Okay.
The ass end of Shitsville is where, as I think the translation in the new international fuck version of it. Anyway, I'll let you decide what it means. So this is where he sees the burning bush,
Right.
which even in the biblical account totally just sounds like a prank somebody was playing on him.
Right.
Because a voice comes out of the bush and says, Moses, Moses, wait, don't come any closer.
Right.
Just stay right there.
Stay there.
And as a matter of fact, take off your shoes. Take off your shoes. It's holy ground. So you stand there with your shoes off. And what else should I make him do? I don't know. I tell him to go to the Pharaoh. Okay, go to the Pharaoh.
Prank war.
Yeah, exactly. And thus launches the grand story of Cecil B. DeMille's 1956 epic,
Yeah.
Ben-Hur. No, just kidding. It's the Ten Commandments.
You know, when I was young and in church, especially in primary, they would, I think the wording in the Bible is it was like on fire but not consumed.
Yeah.
And this was this was so incredible. Like, you understand, it was burning, but it wasn't burning.
Right.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Cool.
Right.
My gas fireplace at home does the same thing.
Exactly.
It's a really good trick. Anyway, I guess that's not real. So actually, I said that's where Cecil B. DeMille's movie starts. No, that's not where the movie starts. Considering the fact that the movie is almost 4 hours long, it's probably where it should have started.
Right.
But no, then 12-year-old Dan would have been missed out on all that sweet footage of a gauzily clad Ann Baxter as Nefertiti. So,
Oh, yeah.
so no, let's go back a ways for the movie. But for the purposes of our argument, boring. He was not raised as a prince of Egypt. Shut the fuck up.
I know, right?
Anyway, this dopey goat herd. Now the Lord has told him to go to Egypt and tell the Pharaoh to release the Israelites from slavery and then lead them into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Spoiler alert, that was a lie.
I know, right?
You never get to go to a land flowing with milk and honey. That's A, not a land that exists, and B, no. They don't end up there.
On the scale of lands of milk and honey,
Yeah.
the Middle East doesn't rank.
No.
Right?
No, you don't get that.
There are places like that. They're just not in the Middle East.
No, absolutely not. Side note, this land that the Israelites were going to go to that was promised to them by the Lord their God,
Yeah.
what is listed in the Bible as the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites.
Oh, no.
I'm not making that up. Not parasites, but Perizzites, Hivites, and, I shit you not, Jebusites.
Jebusites. Fuck.
I don't even believe in Jebus. Anywho.
And that there is a list of a whole bunch of people who are going to get genocided.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
This
right.
is who you kill first.
One or two of them, it's just like, hey, Lord, these guys are on that land you promised.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, kill
I have a solution.
most of them. Keep their wives, though.
Right.
Whatever.
Exactly.
Anywho, Moses is worried about this plan. He does not trust that the Israelite people will believe that he saw God, or that Pharaoh will listen to him, or that basically any of the things that he's supposed to do will work. A man of great faith he is.
Yeah, exactly.
So God has a plan. Moses should go to the elders of Israel, and they'll go to Pharaoh and say, hey, we talked to God, and he says you should let us take a 3-day weekend to go into the wilderness and do some sacrifices to him. Then, and this is all part of God's plan, the Pharaoh will say no.
Okay.
Because, that's just not how slavery works.
Right.
But then God will fuck up the Egyptians with a bunch of crazy shit, and Pharaoh will let them go. And also, bonus, God will make the Egyptians suddenly super like the Israelites, and the Israelite women will be able to ask the Egyptian ladies for all of their gold and silver jewelry, and they'll totally give it to them.
Okay.
The quote from the Bible is, "And so you will plunder the Egyptians." So,
All right.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
This sounds like a story a first grader made up.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, it
and
does.
then they get the gold and they leave, and the Pharaoh's like, no. Go.
That element of this story just gets worse.
Wow.
It just keeps compounding. But even after that great plan that the Lord has laid out, Moses was still like, but what if Pharaoh doesn't believe me? So God does some cool tricks. He's all, I got nothing in my hands. Look, nothing up my sleeves, right? Now check this out. Throw your stick on the ground. And boom, it turns into a snake. And at which point Moses literally kind of screams and runs away. And then God's like, no, check it out. Pick up the snake by the tail. And ta-da, it's a stick again.
Ooh.
Great. That's a good trick.
Yeah,
That's a good trick. Now,
have you heard of David Blaine?
Now, is God 100% sure that that's going to be enough to trick or to convince Pharaoh? No. So he's got some other tricks. And here's the trick number 2.
So this is God telling Moses what tricks to do when he gets to the
convince Pharaoh
All right.
to let his people go. And it's weird that DeMille skipped this particular trick.
Yeah.
You included the snake trick.
I remember that.
He did not include this one. The Lord says to Moses, "Okay, now take your hand and put it in your robe. All right, pull it out. Ta-da! You have leprosy." And his hand is all like fucking white and leprous. And then he says, "Now put it back in and pull it out. You're cured."
Okay. trying to wrap my head around this one.
What's troubling you, Doug? It's a great trick. It's a great fucking trick.
If I'm Moses, that doesn't make me want to do this more.
No.
Right?
No, that's like that's one of those moments when you're like, am I unpunked?
Exactly.
God.
So you're going to give me leprosy.
I mean, it's cool that you cured me and all, but I don't think I'm going to do trick number 3. Whatever you ask me to do. God's like, now pull out your dick. No.
Exactly.
No, God. Bad God. Anyway, there was a third trick that was involved turning water into blood or whatever, but we don't have to worry about that.
There you go. What is the connection between these two things? Like, why does a stick turning into a snake convince Pharaoh to give up slavery?
Well, okay, what we're doing is trying to convince Pharaoh that the Hebrew God is way cooler and more powerful than his own Egyptian magicians and gods.
Okay.
Turns out, not that much cooler. Those guys can do all the same tricks, or almost all the same tricks. But that's what we're going for.
All right.
My God is more powerful than your God. You have to let us go.
Okay.
Now, okay, we'll get to it. Fuck this. It's so stupid. Okay, Moses eventually packs up his family and his fancy magic stick and his hand that can turn white, and makes his way to Egypt.
You know, I think I might put that stick in the trunk.
You think?
I don't want to have it in the cab with me.
Yeah, exactly. All right, kids, do not throw this on the ground. I promise you will not like it. So he goes up to Yul Brynner and he says, "Let my people go." But actually, let's dispel with the whole image of Chuck Heston as Moses, please.
Yeah.
Because that big, powerful voice was a bullshit betrayal of the biblical account, because Moses literally begs God not to make him talk to Pharaoh because he was kind of dumb and, quote, slow of speech and tongue. So less Charlton Heston, more Gomer Pyle.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
that's where we need... Well, gosh, Mr. Pharaoh, I think you should let my people go, is what we're dealing with here.
Right.
The Lord gets pissed at him, but finally says, okay, fine, you can let your brother Aaron do all the talking.
What's the character of God in this story?
Oh my God, he's the worst.
Right.
He is such a... And here's a little sidebar, just to illustrate that point. When Moses and his family were on their way to Egypt, at the Lord's command, this happens. This is Exodus chapter 4. You can look it up. Verses 24 through 26. It's just right in the middle of everything.
Okay.
At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him.
What?
But Zipporah, that's his wife,
Wow.
took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So the Lord let him alone.
Okay. So God is creeping towards Moses very slowly with like a knife out.
Right?
And Moses' wife is like, I got it. I got this.
Hang on.
Chop. Flick. Right? Yeah.
It's okay. I don't care how many rabbis you throw at making this make sense.
Right.
Fuck no.
Yeah.
There is no way to make sense of this.
And why was God going to kill him?
He
He was like hiding behind the door in the inn.
was
right.
I mean, what kind of psycho God is like, go and do these? I have heard the cries of your people, and go and do these things, and we will save them together. And I'm gonna kill you. Fuck it. You know what? You're slow of speech, and I fucking hate you. Okay, all right. You cut off your son's dick. Fine, we'll let you go.
Oh my God.
So there's that.
Cecil B. DeMille needs to make that movie.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Cecil be demented. Get in there. Okay, so Moses and Aaron go to the Pharaoh and they say, let us go have a festival to our God. And Pharaoh says no, so everything's going according to plan.
Uh-huh.
And then he punishes the Israelites, all of the Israelites, with this whole brick scheme, which is like, you can't have straw to make your brick anymore. And there's this whole thing. Suffice it to say, I don't want to get into all that, but to suffice it to say that the Israelites are suddenly royally pissed at Moses and Aaron because not only have they not delivered them from bondage, but they've just made their lives 1,000 times shittier.
I agree with them.
Yeah. So they're understandably not okay. They go back to the Lord and say, Lord, hello, what gives? And the Lord's like, okay, so first trick didn't work, but we were expecting that. So now you go back to Pharaoh and you do the snake trick. But what would totally suck is if he just let you go because of that. So I'm going to make sure he doesn't. I'm going to harden his heart so he doesn't believe you. The Lord does that.
The psychopath.
It says right there, so that I can show the wonders that I want to show, I'll make sure that the trick doesn't work.
And spoiler alert, that thing he wants to show ends up in infanticide, but we'll get there.
It ends up in all of the sides.
Right, exactly.
It's insane. So now we get to the cool stuff, the plagues.
Ah.
Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on any of them because the story is basically the same for all of them. The Lord tells Moses to do a thing, and that makes this horrible plague happen. And then Pharaoh says, please make it stop. And Moses does. And then Pharaoh's like, nah, fuck you. We're still keeping the slaves.
Right. 10 times. Well, 9 times.
A whole shit ton of
Right.
times. So let's talk about what the plagues are.
Right.
Plague 1 is that the Nile and all the good water in all of Egypt is turned into blood.
Oof.
To my mind, you're kind of blowing your wad right up front there, God.
Exactly.
You save that one for the end.
Yeah.
Because all the fish die and nobody has anything to drink.
That's the finale right there.
That's the finale.
Yeah,
that is you're killing everybody for a week. And this is stuff like the stuff that they've got saved in their vessels turns to blood.
So no one has anything to drink for a week.
But lest you think that this impresses Pharaoh, Pharaoh then has his magicians do the same trick.
Really?
So apparently there was some water left. And he's like, well, my magicians can ruin water too. Okay. Well, great, I guess. You still don't have any water, idiot, but whatever.
The one jug of water you had.
Right. On to the next plague, I guess. So frogs.
Yeah.
Teeming with frogs. Then gnats, which, they're annoying, but, whatever. Then flies.
Right.
All equally annoying, but not enough to convince Pharaoh. So then the Lord kills all the Egyptian livestock.
Jesus Christ.
All of it. That's horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, sheep, goats, all dead.
Okay.
And leaves all of the Israelite livestock alive.
Okay.
That's a hell of a trick.
And yeah, Pharaoh just leaves the livestock with the Israelis, doesn't take the slave livestock.
One assumes.
Yeah.
But also one assumes by now, genocide level of people have died.
Yeah, and pestilence. Can you imagine?
How can anyone have survived a week without water?
Right.
And now all of their livestock is dead.
Leaving aside the fact that none of this actually happened, none of this, like, if it had, this would be recorded.
Yeah.
We would know about
Oh,
this.
yeah. Oh,
right.
Somebody in Egypt might have written something down.
Exactly.
Anywho, we're not done yet. Pharaoh, still not impressed. Then Moses gave all the Egyptians festering boils. Still not enough.
Jesus.
So the Lord says to the Pharaoh, through Moses, that he could totally have killed everybody by now, but he didn't. So, feel lucky.
Right.
But now he's going to bring a hailstorm bigger than any hailstorm that has ever hit Egypt ever. So, and you might see an issue with this. We'll see if you're clever enough to catch on to the issue that I caught on to with this.
All right.
Bring in all your livestock from the fields and shelter them.
The carcasses?
Right?
Right.
You just killed them 2 plagues ago.
Right. Exactly.
Where the fuck did all this what is the timeline here?
Right.
Was this plague 12 years later?
Right.
I don't get how this worked. The book was just not paying attention to its own damn self.
Right.
But there you go. So they
Okay.
bring in all the livestock, or some of them bring in the livestock, some of them don't. The hail happens, is whatever, kills all the crops and strips all the trees.
God.
So now we have livestock that apparently is all dead and also reincarnated. But, no one has food or water.
Yeah.
how?
There's nothing to drink. There's nothing to eat. The animals are dead and festering. Everyone's got disease. Okay.
Still,
Right.
Pharaoh's like, no,
I don't know.
These are pretty good tricks. And by now, his magicians have failed out. They cannot recreate any of this shit.
Okay.
So good on him then. But so Pharaoh says, hey, please make it stop. I'll let you all go. And then Moses makes it stop. And then he's still like, psych, nope, you're all still slaves.
Number 9.
This is a great trick. No, we're on to back to bugs for a second.
Okay.
Because we needed locusts to come into the... and then a few days of darkness.
Okay.
And then the big finale. But for that and so much more, you'll have to tune in next week for the exciting conclusion of
Dun, dun, dun.
This Story Sucks! Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, I can't wait. But let's move on.
Let's do it. Hey, Uncle Doug.
Hey.
People in this world listen to our show.
Yeah.
Quite a number.
Which is hard to believe.
It is hard to believe we're idiots.
Yeah.
But not as big idiots as those who are so pleased by what we produce that they give us money.
Also unbelievably, but we're grateful for it.
But we're so grateful for
Yeah.
it, and we owe some thanks. So today I would like to give great thanks to Empress Me, like it's Empress Me.
I like that.
See what they did there?
I do.
Gary, Maurice, and Gaia, thank all of you so much for joining the legion of people that are out there trying to make this podcast worth our while we try and make it worth your while.
Absolutely. And, for those of you who want to join the ranks of these beautiful people, just go to our website, hit the support button.
Yeah, whatever it is. Go to
Whatever it is.
howtoheretic.com.
We really should learn how to do this better.
Look around. You'll find a thing. You'll figure it out. You're a smart person, and then you can go to that'll take you to the Patreon page, and then
Just slide your dollar bill into the floppy disk slot.
yes,
And
indeed.
we will get it.
Yeah, exactly.
And while you're at it, go anywhere you can to give 5 stars. Stars don't cost money.
Stars don't cost you anything.
Yeah. Give and give plenty, and don't give less than 5, or you're damned.
You're already listening on the iTunes or the whatever you're listening on. Welcome, Spotify listeners.
Yeah.
So find a way to give us 5 stars. God damn it! It's not that hard.
We love you. Thanks for everything.
Moving along. Hey, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Dan.
To my recollection, now you and I were both raised Mormon. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
The best part about being a young man in Mormonism is knowing for a fact that you're the worst human that is possible on the face of the earth.
Yeah, there's a nice kind of comfort in knowing that God hates you.
God can't stand you, and you're doing everything wrong. And the main evidence for that is that you can't stop touching your little pee-pee.
Yeah. The only thing that brings me joy is the worst possible thing I can do.
So we brought on our good friend Darrel Ray, who we've had on before, to help us through this. Darrel, how are you? Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back.
I'm glad to be back, and I hope I can help you guys get over your fear of jacking off. So, okay.
So apparently, now that we've left religion, we're supposed to somehow believe that this thing that we pathologized our entire youth is not bad. Is that the claim that you're going to be making to us in this segment?
That is the claim I'm going to be making. More importantly, I'm going to be making the claim that if you recover your sexuality, you will also lose your religion in the process. It's almost that simple.
Wow.
Yeah, I have the secret formula. I have the magic juice.
I like it. I'm a little afraid to touch your magic juice, but I'm going in. I'm going in.
The magic juice is lubrication.
If you'll just come along with me, we can make this happen.
Okay, so you've made
spelled C-U-M.
I'll come all over you.
This is not going to be a good segment. This is going to be a very bad segment. I can already tell. No, Darrel, you have made quite a bit of study of this particular subject, and you've written about it. Talk to us about masturbation.
Well, whenever I give a talk, as you've probably seen me, I almost always begin my talks with, do you masturbate? I do. And I raise my hand in front of, 100 people or 1,000 people. I say, I masturbate. How many of you masturbate? And getting people to admit that is the first step in reclaiming your sex. Because you are the first sex partner you've ever had in your life. And you may be the last sex partner you'll ever have in your life. And you only get one body in this life. And there isn't any afterlife. And you certainly aren't going to get any sex in the afterlife if you're Christian. You do if you're a Muslim, but not a Christian.
You have not read Mormon theology.
Well, no. Mormons are not Christians. And I will flat out make that claim because you're not Trinitarians.
Oh, we're going to have to
1900.
Yeah, we're going to have to do a whole segment about this.
Yeah, for almost 1,800 years, Trinitarianism was the defining a structure of Christianity, and anybody that was a Trinitarian got kicked out. The Arians were not Trinitarian. The Monists were not Trinitarians, and they all got kicked out. Well, you guys are not. Well, you guys, your ex-guys you're not Trinitarian, so you can't be Christian. And any Mormon that says they're Christian, let's just be honest. We know what defines a Christian. It's the Trinitarian belief. It has been that way since 325 A.D.
Okay.
Period. So
I'm about to say a sentence I never really thought I would say in my entire life, but I want to steer you back to masturbation. Because we're headed down a rabbit hole we don't need to be down.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Holy Trinity between my legs.
So let's get back to masturbation. So anyway, I ask them that, and they have a hard time. People sometimes have a hard time raising their hands, although a lot of people do, which is really cool. But if you think about it, you're the only person, you're the first sex partner you have. You may be the last sex partner. You've only got one body. Let's look at that without religion and realize that religion has used your sexuality against you from the day you're born.
That's
you're being taught you're
so
a
true.
Yeah.
worthless piece of shit. Your natural drives are your biggest enemy. Your body's your enemy. I mean, the whole Garden of Eden thing with Adam and Eve, that's the most sex negative story you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then it goes downhill from there.
Well,
so
and if you want to control someone, tell them that the thing that they inherently are is bad and that only you can save them from it. And you've got, if you can make them believe it, you've got them.
Well, and if you can associate
Right.
bliss, and if you can associate sexual ecstasy with guilt, you can really do damage to people. You know what I mean?
Well, that's absolutely the truth. And so what we see is that people who are brainwashed in this, or put into this system, even as they leave the system or change into another religion, take that with them, the shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And it really messes up. Can I use the word fuck on here?
Yes, please.
Okay. It really fucks up their sex life. Even people who have long since left religions carry this shame and guilt. And it is my contention that we need to start talking out loud about masturbation, because that's the first thing. You don't go to premarital sex, and don't go to, are you swinging from the chandeliers in your sex life or anything like that. Go back to the basics. Start with the place you started as a sexual human being, and that's masturbation. And that is, once you get that down, it really opens a door to talking about everything else related to sex and sexual shame, sexual guilt, and your body, all that stuff.
I mean,
that's my contention.
You say once you get that down, and to me, what that means, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is once you get that down, meaning once you can masturbate without feeling horrible guilt, without feeling the shame, or at least notice the shame that you're feeling, notice the guilt that you're feeling, and ask yourself some questions about it. But it took me years to come close to like any kind of sexual activity without shame and guilt. It just followed me. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in hell. I didn't believe in any of that shit. And I was still feeling like shit when I was masturbating or having sex. It was weird.
Well, you didn't have me around.
I know. I needed Uncle Darrel.
That's right. Because I'm serious. I think had we, and I will be right in the same place you are, years it took me to get over it.
Yeah.
But I wish I'd have had me around. I wish I had somebody around saying, you are a worthwhile human being and your sexuality does not define you, and your religious shame, you need to find a way to move around that and get rid of it. There's so much to be done about that can be done rather quickly. We just had this gigantically successful retreat for recovering from religion this last weekend. And one of the main focuses of that whole retreat was sexuality. And here are people who are recently left the church, a lot of them had recently left some church.
Right.
And they're there, and here we're starting out the entire weekend talking about sex and masturbation and premarital sex and all this stuff. And people's mouths are open because they're sitting there thinking, basically thinking, fuck, I've never opened my mouth and used the word fuck before.
Right.
So by the end of the weekend, we had people saying, this is the most liberating. I've never been able to tell anybody I masturbate. I've never been able to admit that I'm gay or I'm bisexual or I'm transsexual. And yet that I've let that define me. And by just a single weekend, I could tell a major amount of difference. And not everybody, but the vast majority of these people.
So what's the starting point when a person wants to let go of that guilt, let go of that shame? What's the starting point on that? Where should we start?
Well, I think you already hit the nail on the head. Being mindful of it. So you can get your porn out, you can get your lubrication out, you can go in your bedroom, lock the door, whatever you do, and then be mindful of the shame and the guilt that you're feeling, and just let it be there. Because if you deny it, if you fight it, it's probably going to come back. And it's being mindful of it and letting it just rest there. You'll find that it doesn't take very long, and you can't fight it. You can't dispute it with logic. I mean, it wasn't put there with logic. It was put there before your rational brain had any ability to put its own logic together.
Yeah, it's kind of it's in the emotion part of the brain, not the reasonable part of the brain.
Absolutely. So I think mindfulness, and if you don't know what I'm talking about with respect to mindfulness, your listeners, go look it up. There's some mindfulness workbooks out there that are perfect. They're beautiful. They don't necessarily talk about sex, but the techniques that are in those manuals, mindfulness manuals, work just as well.
Great.
But I find that when you can teach people to enjoy their body, to sit down, touch their body, feel the shame or the guilt, and then move on with touching their body, and just acknowledge, oh yeah, that's that shame, that's that guilt. My mom taught me, grandparents taught me. Just say, oh, there it is. Thank you, Mom, and move right on. Thank you, Dad. Move right on.
Right.
You're not fighting it. You're letting it come in, and you're letting it flow out.
And you're noticing it.
Yeah, you're noticing it, but you're noticing it as an observer.
I don't know if I'm ready in my life to say thank you, Mom, right after I have an orgasm. I'm not there yet.
Yeah. You can find your own verbiage. I think that's probably wise.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it again anyway, all right?
Yeah.
That was a weird day.
Yeah,
Good Lord.
Well, by and large, you're not going to be saying thank you after your orgasm because this is all while you're moving up. You're going into whatever your activity is.
Right.
And
well,
this yeah.
I always felt, and this is maybe a little too personal, but I was always in the back of my mind when I was getting into masturbating or having sex with someone, the shame and guilt was there, but it was overwhelmed by the endorphins and the 3.5 billion years of evolution. But the moment I would have an orgasm, the shame and guilt would slam down on me.
Yeah.
So hard.
Yeah, right.
It ruined relationships when I would actually, move on to sex with a partner, that I was such ashamed and, terrified after we had sex that it actually ruined relationships of mine.
Oh my God. I had the same experience. I can't imagine how shitty this must feel to a partner. But exactly. I did this so many I did this a couple of times where I would fool around with a girl. I was still sort of, 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the church. And I would, I still had, even if I was only halfway in the church, I was 100% teenage boy.
Yeah.
So I was definitely driven to touch her boobs no matter what.
Yeah.
And I'd fool around with her and we'd have a great time and it would feel amazing and she'd feel amazing and it would just be this awesome time. And then 15 seconds later, I'd be sitting on the foot of the bed going, we can never do this again. Exactly. I feel so shitty. How fucking... it's a pathology. It's the worst. It's awful.
Yeah. But you were young. You were still captivated by that ideology. You're not there now. You're an adult.
Yeah.
As people leave and get out of religion or question the religion's dogma around sexuality, there's some techniques. And I really want to talk about some of those techniques with you. Like
dive in, buddy. I want to hear it.
Mindfulness. Well, one of the techniques is that when you have a partner and is to talk up front and out loud about the programming and say, look, I'm working on dealing with some old shame and guilt that came from my religion. I just want to let you know what's going on so that you will not feel like you're in any way responsible, but here's what's going on. And when we're finished having sex, sometimes the guilt overwhelms me or the shame. And it's just a residual from all the fucking craziness my religion gave me. So when we're finished, I want to just lay back and enjoy, and I'm going to let that shame come in. And if I let that happen, if I observe it quietly, I don't want to talk or anything, then about 10 minutes later, I'll be ready to re-engage in some way, shape, or form.
I love that.
So you're controlling, you're helping the other person know what the boundaries need to be to help you get through this. And I guarantee you it will not be long till you're not doing that anymore. You don't need to. And your partner will be more respectful.
I feel like that kind of honest, upfront, like confrontational, not with your partner, but with confronting your own emotional sense and your own state of being that's got to like power through. Like it took me years to like get through all of the stuff that my brain wanted, that I had stored in my brain, but I didn't take that kind of an approach. I was not that upfront about it. I took I'll just guilt my way through sex for the next 10 years and hope that someday it just goes away. I like your approach a lot better.
Yeah, you'll get through it a lot faster. When you try to, quote, push your way through or force your way through, you're actually empowering it. You're giving it more power. Now, that's based upon a myth that we all buy into this myth too much, and sometimes totally. And this is we're gonna change gears a little bit and talk about the myth of the past. And when you go through life believing that your past is currently a part of your life, you're buying into perceptual myth, because at this moment, you and me and Doug are all talking. That's the only thing there is. Our history is contained in a compartment in our brain. It doesn't live. It only lives if we let it live.
Right.
So if you can, one of the techniques is to recognize that your history is something that you control. You narrate your own history, and you create the perception of what that history means. You put meaning on that history, and the more you let that meaning. More you put meaning as, I had a terrible past, I had a horrible brainwashing, I had a horrible whatever, the more you're currently in the present going to behave as if it were that way. Yeah. If you can back up and be an observer of your history and say, man, my mother, father, brother, whoever really, really fucked me up at that moment, but this is not that moment. This is a different moment. I can look back on that moment, just like I can look back, on the fact that I struck out in the last baseball game I played. Right. I don't keep that as a horrible memory. I don't like it, but it was not a horrible memory. So you have to put your own interpretations. And one of the things I teach, and many therapists will teach, is how do you live in the present, in the moment? And when you're with the sex partner and you're enjoying their body and they're enjoying yours, how do you stay in that moment? And if those thoughts come in, how do you let them come in? Don't resist them, and then let them pass on through and get back to enjoying the bodies. That's a very important technique.
Well, and I think that's very interesting, because so many of us who, this isn't a common experience for all humans, but for all of us who left religion, the past is kind of a monster that you're always kind of keeping at a distance, because that you've changed. You've gotten away from all that damage that was done to you and the organization that did it. But, a lot of, I myself find that I don't like to think back about, my life when I was in religion, because it's very painful. And, for many other reasons than I was a shitty asshole religious guy. You know what I mean? I don't like to, like to think about that. Yeah. But I think that's a fascinating way of looking at it. Yeah.
Well, you made a comment right there that I think is interesting, because you said use the word "it" is painful, indicating my past. Thinking about my past is painful, and so I would ask anyone making that kind of statement: are you creating the pain in the moment right now? And if you are, then it's you that's creating that pain. It's not your past. It's not the preacher that molested you. It's not all these. And I'm not endorsing any of the shit that went on back there.
Sure.
What I am saying is, how do we learn to live who we are, what we are right now? And the better you get that skill, the more you're going to enjoy life overall. Whether you had a bad past or not. I don't care if you've been atheist your whole life. I still advocate you need to learn how to live in the now before you can have a healthy emotional life. because you're always going to be disengaged in some way, shape, or form if you don't know how to live in the now.
Well, and I just want to clarify that I'm not paying for this session. Okay.
I was going to say. We haven't agreed on a rate yet. This is. I will say this: there is no more living in the now than masturbation.
Yeah,
that feels
Yep.
Feels like the number one living in the now that you can do.
Exactly. And so if you can practice living in the now while you're masturbating, you're getting great practice for in the rest of your entire life, actually.
Interesting.
In those terms.
Yeah, I love that. And apparently, we should mention this because it's a bunch of male voices here. Apparently, girls do this too. Is that possible? Women also are allowed to masturbate?
It's probably... Women don't seem to masturbate as much as men, but they do at a high rate, and we're not sure why. In fact, it may be cultural. It may be that women are more shamed by a long shot than men are.
Huh.
So they're taught from very early on their bodies are their worst enemy. I mean, the whole Adam and Eve thing puts the whole onus on Eve. So whether women do it at equal or not, I don't know. It's not relevant. I will say that it's beyond a reasonable doubt, 60 to 80% of women masturbate. But women and men do. We both go through cycles. So, there may be times in your life when you're just so preoccupied with other things, you don't even think about masturbating. Sex is not on your mind. See, I know some women, they've told me I went through a divorce. I wasn't interested in sex for 2 years afterwards. I didn't masturbate or anything. But once it started coming back, I got really active.
Yeah.
And that is okay. People do that. I've noticed in my own life, literally in my own masturbatory activity I'm 39 years old now, and I've noticed that I constantly I just celebrated the 30th anniversary of my 39th birthday. So there you go.
Congratulations.
More on us there. I've seen myself go through cycles where I'm horny as hell for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and then it really tapers off, and I might not be nearly as horny. I might not even masturbate one day, and then I'll be back to masturbating 3 times a day or something. And it goes in cycles, and it may be a 6-week cycle or a 1-month cycle or whatever, but I don't know. Other people do that, but I know I've heard enough people say they go through those kinds of cycles. And those are pretty normal.
I'm glad it happens in cycles, because if I continued to masturbate at the rate I did in my early 20s, I wouldn't have a house. I wouldn't have a job.
You'd just be in jail masturbating.
I would have had to pause this podcast.
I mean, I think one of the conclusions of this conversation, and one of the things that I had to figure out, which is crazy to me, is that this idea that is not just in Christian culture, but is very much in Christian culture, that your body is a temple, not a playground,
right,
is exactly bass-ackwards.
Right.
Like, my body is the only playground I get, and I'm in it all the time, and I'm going to fucking try all the rides at least once, just to see what I like.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane to me that people think, I mean, could there be a more boring thing in the universe than a temple? I don't want my body to be a temple. I want to play.
Right. You remind me of that. I think I can get the story right of the guy who went to the doctor and said, "Doctor, I think I've got a really, really bad problem." And the doctor says, "Well, I think you may have a problem too." And the guy says, "Well, what do I need to do?" Well, I'd like to examine you first. And the guy says, "Okay, can you examine me?" He said, "Well, first you need to stop masturbating." So I can.
Yeah, that's if you have to slow down just so that anyone can get a look at a thing, that you may have pushed it a little far.
Maybe. When I was a student of Dr. Albert Ellis's back in the 70s. He's the godfather, the inventor of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh wow!
He was probably the number one sex therapist and sexologist of his day, and not to be confused with Havelock Ellis 50 years before. who also was one of the earliest sex therapists. But anyway, Dr. Ellis was my mentor, and he was very adamant that masturbation is the key to understanding your own sexuality. And he really taught a lot of let's talk openly about our body parts. Let's not pussyfoot around. Let's not worry about whether we're going to hell or anything about it. And from that, I took a lesson, and I kind of had to stay quiet because I was an organizational psychologist for 30 years. But once I got out of that, and I wrote The God Virus, which I think you guys have probably read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Sex and God, my second book there, it occurs to me from what Ellis taught, but the key to getting to reclaiming your sexuality and getting rid of religion is really getting in touch with those components of you that religion has denied. And that's what you're saying. Religion has told you all these things.
Yeah.
And so what pisses me off a little bit, and I don't want to sound like I'm too critical of, Hitchens or Harris or Dawkins or Dennett or, any of the writers, is they seem to avoid sex and sexuality. They don't.
True.
If you look at all those books, the number of pages devoted to sex and sexuality is infinitesimal. Thousands of pages there, and you can find maybe a dozen.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say Hitchens doesn't say some pithy things, but nobody's focused on sex. And here's my contention. We, as an atheist, as a secular group, we need to be focusing. Stop debating whether God exists or not. That's passé. That's useless. Debate whether masturbation is addictive or not. Let's talk about touching your genitals and enjoying yourself. I tell you, I think we will deconvert a lot more Christians that way than debating whether God's alive or not.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because one of the big things that's happening here in Utah right now is this is because Mormons are so fucking crazy about sex and pent up, and their position is so untenable. Utah, and especially the most Mormon parts of Utah, have the highest porn consumption in the country.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then they, and it ruins marriages because the women catch their men watching porn and think that, and then the men claim to be addicted to porn, and porn and so now there's this whole organizations have sprung up about porn is the new drug and it's addictive and all that stuff. And it's not the porn that's addictive. It's you've been taught all this crazy shit. And now you have this you have this very unhealthy relationship to your own sexuality.
Right. Yeah, you got a bad relationship with your body if you think it's addictive. Well, there's a guy, I believe he's out of the University of Illinois. I can't remember his name right now. Grubbs, I think his name is. He's been doing quite a bit of research for the last 5 years on this whole notion of sex addiction.
Yeah. And
as you probably know, I've got several talks on sex addiction, and it's non-existent. It's a religious concept. It's not a psychological concept. But what he had, Josh Grubbs, that's his name, Josh Grubbs. Josh, PhD out of there. What he has found is the more religious you are, the more likely you are to self-diagnose or be diagnosed by your pastor as a sex addict.
Interesting.
People who are not religious almost never identify as sex addicts.
Interesting.
So it's the religious shame that makes people think they're an addict, and that's the narrative that religion wants you to take on. Is if you touch I have it on a Catholic site that has this guy that's like a spokesman for the Catholic Church, and he says in his talk, if you masturbate even once to porn, you are a sex addict. Now, that's what he says. Once.
Oh my God, that is a man who is proclaiming his own addiction right there.
Yeah, exactly.
He wrote that right before and right after he masturbated. No doubt about it.
Yeah. And I think therein lies another thing to consider, and that is think about people who get into religion real early in life, with the best example being Catholic priests. Back when I was a clinical psychologist, I practiced as a clinical psychologist for about 10 years in my early career. I had I had two different priests drive over 100 miles to see me because they didn't want their a bishop to find out they were talking to a psychologist.
Oh, of course.
And both of these priests wanted to talk to me. This was about the same time the sex addiction idea came out. 1983, Patrick Carnes wrote, the asshole Patrick Carnes wrote the book on sex addiction. He's horrible, and the book's terrible. So I don't recommend anybody. So they come to me and say, I think I'm addicted to porn. Each of these independently, they don't know each other. And I listened to them for about 3 sessions, and I basically said, they sound like normal 13-year-old boys. That's
Right.
what they sounded like. These are 50-year-old plus males in the priesthood, and they sound like 13-year-old boys.
Wow.
After hearing two of these priests, and then over the years watching the Catholic Church and the priest thing, I want to educate your audience about how our biology works. And that'll make us understand what's going on with these priests. One of whom about 10 years ago got arrested.
Oh dear.
For, you can guess it, and
Yeah.
he's in prison now.
So
he did not
you
tell me
failed
any of
to
that.
cure him.
Well, I didn't.
I'm just kidding.
My words to him were, "You sound like a normal 13-year-old person," and I think that's a part of the problem. And there's nothing wrong with the porn you're watching, and there's nothing wrong with masturbating. So, but he couldn't accept that, of course. So
Right.
that was the end of our sessions together.
Yeah.
Basically, the same story with both these priests. But I want to go back to this. Is really important for us to know as secularists what's going on in your brain at roughly 3 different times. And let's just talk about males for right now. I could do both, but it'll take us forever. Let's talk 3 times your brain gets a shot of testosterone. 2 times in utero, early and late in the development of the fetus.
Okay.
And then testosterone, during that time, the brain is being developed according to whether it's getting testosterone or not. Because remember, if there is no testosterone, the brain becomes female. The body becomes female. Testosterone is what tells the brain and the body to become male.
Huh.
So the default of most mammals is female.
Right.
So in the absence of testosterone, you get female. And so there are actually a lot of cases. I think I read somewhere 1 in 10,000 people have testosterone resistance. Well, you've heard of insulin resistance
Mm-hmm.
in diabetics. Well, testosterone resistance means your body can't use the testosterone. So if your body can't respond to testosterone, what do you think happens? You become a female.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got X and Y chromosomes. You are a male genetically, but for all practical purposes, you are a female. You grow breasts, you have a vagina, you never develop testes. I mean, all these things happen, and yet you're a male. You're a male genetically.
Huh.
So that's what happens in utero if the testosterone isn't done, quote, normal.
Right.
And I'm not very big on the word normal, but it's the way things generally pan out.
Right.
So now we've got a baby's birth. Testosterone goes silent. And so you see boys and girls developing, and they look a lot alike. A 6-7-year-old boy isn't that much different than a 6 or 7-year-old girl, except girls maybe are growing a little faster and maybe a little taller. But when testosterone is once again programmed to kick in again, then the brain starts doing something as a direct result of the testosterone. And that is, it's looking around its environment and saying, what is the appropriate sexual target for me and my species? That's what it's saying. And I mean, that sounds gross, but that's really what species do.
Right.
If you were a turkey, same thing. Your brain is programmed to look for specific features, but they're not prescribed. They're just generic features. I'll give you another example. In babies, we do know that when a baby is born, they have the rudimentary skills to see and identify a human face. You can put a dog face in front of a baby as much as you want. The baby will never think that dog is its mother. You put a human face in front of that baby, and it will respond to that human face. And within 6 weeks or so, it will not just respond to the face, it'll respond to the female face. And more importantly, in a very short time after that, it only responds to the female face that it is its mother or female face that's been there in the most. So what it tells us is that genetically, we are programmed to look for something like, you draw, if you're a bad artist like me, you draw a round oval circle and put two little round things and a long thing in the middle and another round thing in the bottom. You got a human face,
right? And
that's those kinds of drawings have been used in the research around babies. So we know that babies are programmed, but they're only programmed so much. The rest, the brain has to. It's like coloring. You have to fill in the colors. We only have 23,000 genes in our genome. There are animals and there are plants with more genes than we've got. To have to program everything about your sexuality would take thousands of genes or lots more genes than we've got. So what nature's done is a bunch of shortcuts and say, let's just shortcut this. And when you get about 12 years old, we're going to shoot some testosterone in you. And whatever's around you that looks like a female, that's probably the target for your particular species or whatever. And so what if you're being raised in an all-boys Catholic school and being groomed to be a priest? Who are you surrounded by?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Young men.
Exactly. Let's go back to an ethologist, Dr. Tinbergen, in the 1950s, did experiments with geese and ducks. And what he found was if the ducks, the baby geese, let me use geese. If the geese were hatched in his presence without the mama goose, they put the mama goose in another room, they hatch the eggs, and the only thing in the room is him, and he starts walking away, those geese are programmed to follow whoever's around.
Right.
That's what the geese do. So he walks around for 2 or 3 hours, they imprint on him. Now you bring the mama goose in and say, okay, take care of these babies, and the babies follow him out. They will not. There's nothing he could do to get those babies to follow the mama,
right?
Because they'd imprint on him. Well, it's a similar thing going on here. If you're surrounded with a bunch of boys and they're all 13-year-old boys are probably the target of what your brain is developed to look at.
Wow.
It's pretty insidious when you think what's going on in the brain. And, the criminal activity that the Catholic Church is engaging in and hiding all this is a direct result of the Catholic Church's own way of raising kids that just upsets our biology. It upsets our biology horribly.
Huh.
So that's kind of the answer to why it's happening to so many Catholic priests. It's because it's baked in. It's inevitable.
Yes, right. But it happens to every one of us.
Right.
All of us at 12 years old are looking around, and so here's the beautiful thing. It's really fascinating once you understand what's going on with us. It's an evolutionary biology thing. Then you'll realize why do women, the majority of women in East Asia have very small breasts or none at all almost. Why do Welsh women seem to have the biggest breasts on the planet? I've been there. It's amazing. So, okay. Why are there entire tribes in South Central Africa that have something called steopygia with gigantic butts?
Right.
Well, the reason for that is, as humans, we are literally breeding ourselves.
Right.
When you're 12 years old and you're looking around and you see women with big butts and everybody's saying, "Ooh, she's really attractive because she has a big butt," your brain puts two and two together and say, "Oh, I need to find a big butt woman to mate with." It's basic biology at that point. Or if you're in Wales, you look around and all the women have large breasts. You say, "That's the target for my culture." It's the shortcut. Rather than programming you to always find women with big breasts or big butts, you have a shortcut that says whatever is there is probably the right target. Well, just like for geese, whatever is moving is probably your mother, unless you got an idiotic psychologist trying to fuck your life up. It's pretty rare. So evolution doesn't need to tell you, okay, look for somebody with colored feathers on that's about this big. It doesn't need to. It just says, look for whatever's moving, and that's probably your mom. And look for whatever's female or attractive in your environment, and that's probably the right target for you.
Wow.
Huh.
And so we are literally breeding ourselves because cultures diverge. It's called genetic drift.
Drift, right.
Right.
Genetic drifts. Cultures and genes, genetic drift is influenced by culture as well. And so you can go to different parts of the world, and different things are attractive in different cultures. And it's very strong. And here's the deal. Once a 12 to 14-year-old boy is locked in on the program of their culture, they're probably not going to change the rest of their life.
Huh.
Now, it's not to say they can't, and they don't. They do. I'm not saying that. It's just it's locked in, and males lock in a lot stronger than females do.
Interesting.
So females look around what's attractive in our environment, but they are more flexible. Females are far more. Males are. We're actually pretty rigid in our sexual preferences.
My experience has been that I'm more rigid and they're more flexible. That's true.
I'm going to poke a hole in your whole theory here, though. I just got to say,
Okay.
Donald Trump doesn't live in Wales, so
we talk about the genetic drift. Well, we've had a bit of a conversational drift. I've loved every minute of it, but I'm afraid we've gone further than time-wise than we had allotted. So I am going to cut us off here. And we'll pick it up another time. Next time we have you back.
And listeners, get out there and spank it.
Yeah.
Flick the bean, work the Pope, make it all happen.
Well, can I put a plug in to read my book, Sex and God? There's a lot more information on this stuff in there.
Absolutely.
And where else can people find you if they're looking for more information from a delightful, dirty old man?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, Dr. D. Ray 132. Dr. D. Ray 132. DRDRAY 132.
And quick plugs for your organizations, all that sort of stuff.
Yes, Recovering from Religion. If you need help, we are here to help anybody leaving your religion. We give hope, and we try to give hope to people that are trying to leave their religion. We'll help you with your relationships. We'll help you deal with how you raise your children. You name it. Go to our recoveringfromreligion.org and hit the chat button and chat in. Call in 1-884 I doubt it is the phone number.
Love it.
And you can talk to real people, or there may be a local group that meets on a regular basis in your community. We're an international organization, and we'll talk to anybody with English speaking skills, and we do have some Spanish language capacity as well.
Love it. You're delightful, and thanks for coming on. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
All right.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. I suppose you could write us your masturbation stories. Email it's howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you're currently working the rod or the bean, leave us a voicemail at 903-88-HOW-TO. That's 903-884-6986.
I was going to say don't do that, but then it's Mark that actually listens to those first. So, yeah, go ahead and do that. Thanks so much to our patrons.
And thanks to Cody Layton for editing this show.
And thank all of you friends for tuning in. We sure appreciate you.
Bye, friends.